Rob Reiner and his wife were murdered in their home. I immediately said, oh God, their son, because I remember in 2015, or was it spring 16, I interviewed Rob, who had directed this movie called Being Charlie. It's basically about their son, Nick Reiner, who has gone in and out of rehab for an intense heroin addiction multiple times, 12, 13, 14 times, that he could never get a hold of this addiction. And the movie Being Charlie is about this kid who comes from privilege and he ends up living on the streets in Texas.
There, which I'm so proud of. And you'll appreciate this because you're a director, and the sound people who I talk to, they go, how the fuck did you do that? How did you do that? And the scene is this. And it's the simplest looking scene. It looks like nothing's happening.
A 32-year-old son was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder after police found his famous parents dead inside their own home on a quiet afternoon. There were no forced entry signs, no robbery indicators, no warning calls. Just a sealed house, a locked room, and 2 bodies discovered hours later by someone who trusted address. Detectives isolated the son within hours. Phone data movements and witness gaps tightened the circle. Cameras went silent, timelines conflicted, and every new detail deepened contradiction between image and reality. Prosecutors filed first-degree murder charges. Special circumstances were added. Bail was denied. Custody became solitary. Medical evaluations were ordered, and courtroom calendar began stretching the case into an uncertain future. What happened inside that room? Who was awake? Who moved first? What was said? What evidence remains sealed? What mistakes shaped the timeline? And what truth hides behind reports? Fear. On the afternoon of Sunday, December 14th, 2025, a horrifying discovery was made at a residence in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. Law enforcement officers responded to a call at 1300 Parkwood Drive, the longtime home of celebrated filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner. Upon entering the master bedroom, authorities found both individuals deceased. The scene was immediately secured, and initial assessments indicated a violent struggle. The incident, which resulted in the deaths of 2 prominent figures in the entertainment industry, quickly became a matter of national interest. Rob Reiner, 78, was a Hollywood icon known for his work as both an actor and a director, as well as a vocal political activist. Michelle Reiner, 69, was a photographer and producer. The investigation rapidly focused on a family member. By the evening of that same day, the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, had taken the couple's 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner, into custody in connection with the homicides. Rob Reiner was born on March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, New York. He was the son of Estelle Reiner and the legendary comedic writer and director Carl Reiner. Raised in a family deeply embedded in show business, Rob Reiner began his career acting in television. He achieved widespread fame in the 1970s for his role as Michael "Meathead" Stivic in the sitcom All in the Family. His portrayal of the liberal son-in-law of Archie Bunker earned him 2 Emmy Awards and established his place in American pop culture. Following his acting success, Reiner transitioned into directing, where he produced a string of critically and commercially successful films. His directorial filmography includes This Is Spinal Tap, 1984, Stand By Me, 1986, The Princess Bride, 1987, When Harry Met Sally, 1989, and A Few Good Men, 1992. His work spanned multiple genres, from satire and fantasy to courtroom drama, solidifying his reputation as one of the most versatile filmmakers of his generation. Beyond entertainment, Reiner was a significant figure in political activism. He was known for his advocacy in early childhood education and environmental causes. Colleagues and peers described him as diplomatic and socially engaged. Following the news of his death, Tributes from actors, directors, and political figures emphasized his contributions to the arts and his decades-long commitment to public service. Michelle Singer Reiner was a photographer, producer, and social activist. She married Rob Reiner in 1989, and the couple remained together for 36 years until their deaths. While often supporting her husband's projects, Michelle maintained her own career in photography and production. She was notably involved in LGBTQ+ rights advocacy and various social causes. Michelle was deeply involved in criminal justice reform. Reports indicate she dedicated significant time to visiting prisons and advocating for inmates, maintaining correspondences with reform figures and prisoners alike. Her focus was often described as human-centric, aiming to bring attention to systemic issues within the justice system. Communications retrieved from the period immediately preceding her death, including emails sent the night before, reflected her ongoing engagement with these causes and her characteristic attention to the well-being of others. Rob and Michelle Reiner had 3 children together: Jake, Nick, and Romy. Jake Reiner. The eldest son, Jake, has acted as a spokesperson for the family following the incident, managing public statements and matters regarding his parents' remains. Nick Reiner. The 32-year-old middle child, who is the central figure in the criminal investigation. Romy Reiner. A filmmaker and actress. Reports state she was the individual who arrived at the home and discovered her parents' bodies. Rob Reiner also had a daughter, Tracy Reiner, from his previous marriage to Penny Marshall, whom he adopted during that union. Nick Reiner's history is marked by well-documented struggles with substance abuse and mental health. He had experienced periods of homelessness and addiction, topics which the family had addressed publicly in the past. In 2015, Nick and Rob Reiner collaborated on the film Being Charlie, a drama based loosely on Nick's experiences with drug addiction and rehabilitation. In addition to addiction issues, Nick had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and other mental health challenges. These conditions were known to the family and have been cited in subsequent reports as relevant context regarding his stability leading up to December 2025. Investigative reports suggest tension within the family in the hours preceding the murders. Witnesses and sources indicate that an argument occurred between Nick Reiner and his parents at a holiday gathering the night before the incident. The specifics of the disagreement have not been fully released by authorities, but establish a timeline of conflict leading into Sunday, December 14th. At approximately 3:38 p.m. on December 14th, a massage therapist arrived at the Reiner residence for a scheduled appointment. Upon receiving no answer at the door, the therapist contacted Romy Reiner. Romy arrived at the property shortly thereafter. Upon entering, she discovered the bodies of her parents in the master bedroom and immediately contacted emergency services. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office conducted autopsies on both victims. The official cause of death for both Rob and Michelle Reiner was ruled as homicide resulting from multiple sharp force injuries. The findings were consistent with a stabbing attack. The investigation was assigned to the Robbery Homicide Division of the LAPD, a standard procedure for high-profile or complex capital crimes. A security hold was placed on the case immediately, sealing specific details of the crime scene from the public to preserve the integrity of the investigation. A significant police perimeter was established around the Brentwood home as forensics teams processed the scene. Police quickly identified Nick Reiner as the primary person of interest. Surveillance footage and witness statements reportedly contributed to this focus. At approximately 9:15 p.m. on December 14th, less than 6 hours after the discovery of the bodies, Nick Reiner was located and arrested by LAPD officers. Following his arrest, Nick Reiner was booked into the Los Angeles County Jail. Although an initial bail amount was technically set in administrative records, it was promptly revoked due to the nature of the capital charges. He remains held without bail. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office charged Nick Reiner with 2 counts of first-degree murder, Furthermore, the charges include special circumstances allegations regarding multiple murders, which can make a defendant eligible for life in prison without the possibility of parole or, in certain contexts, the death penalty, though California currently has a moratorium on executions. During early legal proceedings, Nick Reiner was represented by high-profile defense attorney Alan Jackson. However, Jackson subsequently withdrew from the case. The withdrawal necessitated the appointment of a public defender to represent the accused. This change in legal representation caused scheduling delays for the arraignment and plea entry. The next significant court date was rescheduled for February 23, 2026. Reports regarding Nick Reiner's confinement indicate he is being held in solitary confinement, a measure often taken for high-profile inmates or those with specific safety concerns. He undergoes weekly mental health evaluations. Sources close to the situation have stated that during interactions in custody, the suspect has expressed confusion regarding the charges and has made claims regarding conspiracies, suggesting a disconnection from the reality of the legal situation. While law enforcement has not released a singular, definitive motive, the investigation is heavily weighing the suspect's history of mental illness and substance abuse. The argument reported from the night prior serves as a proximate timeline event, but the broader context involves Nick's diagnosed schizophrenia and potential changes in psychiatric medication management. As of early 2026, the motive remains legally unconfirmed. The prosecution is expected to present evidence regarding the events of December 14th, while the defense will likely focus on the suspect's mental state at the time of the killings. The case awaits further adjudication in the Los Angeles Superior Court. The shock of the double homicide was compounded by the deep public affection for the victims. On December 17, 2025, 3 days after the discovery of the bodies, the Reiner children, Jake and Romy, issued their first public statement through a family spokesperson. The statement was notable for its raw expression of grief, moving beyond standard press releases to describe their parents not merely as guardians, but as their closest companions. "They weren't just our parents. They were our best friends," the siblings wrote, requesting privacy while acknowledging the unimaginable pain of the tragedy. This sentiment underscored the close-knit nature of the family, which made the charges against their brother Nick even more devastating for the surviving siblings. The reaction from the entertainment industry was immediate and widespread, reflecting Rob Reiner's 50-year tenure in Hollywood and Michelle's deep ties to the arts and activism communities. Critics' Choice Awards, January 4, 2026, the first major televised event following their deaths, became a platform for mourning. Host Chelsea Handler dedicated a significant portion of her opening monologue to the couple. She characterized Rob Reiner as the nicest guy in Hollywood, a moniker often cited by peers, and emphasized the couple's shared legacy of decency. Industry tributes. Tributes poured in from collaborators spanning decades, including the cast of All in the Family, The Princess Bride, and This Is Spinal Tap. Figures such as Billy Crystal and Albert Brooks, close friends of the couple, were reported to be fiercely protecting the surviving children, providing a shield against the media frenzy. The charging of Nick Reiner, a man with a documented history of schizophrenia and severe addiction, forced a national conversation regarding the intersection of severe mental illness and familial violence. Media analysis moved beyond the salacious details of the crime to explore the difficulties families face when caring for adult children with psychotic disorders. The case highlighted the revolving door of rehabilitation and the limitations of the mental health support systems available, even to wealthy and resource-rich families. The tragedy serves as a grim case study in the unpredictability of untreated or resistant psychiatric conditions. There is a tragic irony in Michelle Reiner's death, given her life's work. As a fierce advocate for criminal justice reform, she spent years humanizing inmates and arguing for rehabilitation over purely punitive measures. Observers have noted that the very legal system she sought to reform will now judge her son. Her legacy has provided a lens of empathy for the proceedings, with many commentators urging the public to view the case not just as a celebrity scandal, but as a complex human tragedy involving mental health failure. The Reiner case has illuminated the friction between celebrity status and the privacy required for a criminal investigation. Because Rob Reiner was a public figure, the pressure for immediate details, such as the release of autopsy reports, was immense. This case has been cited in debates about sensationalism versus respect, as news outlets balanced the public's right to know against the gruesome nature of the parricide and the surviving family's request for dignity. A key piece of evidence in the timeline of events is a confrontation that occurred on the evening of Saturday, December 13, 2025. Multiple sources confirmed that Rob, Michelle, and Nick attended a holiday party hosted by Conan O'Brien. Witnesses reported that Nick was behaving erratically, asking guests if they were famous, and eventually getting into a very loud argument with his father. This public dispute, which led to the family leaving the event early, is viewed by investigators as a potential precipitating event, raising questions about Nick's mental state in the final hours before the murders. Following the discovery of the bodies, the LAPD successfully petitioned to seal the autopsy reports and other specific investigative details. While death certificates were eventually released, confirming the victims died within minutes of the attack, the full coroner's report remains under a security hold. Authorities stated this was necessary to prevent the media from leaking details that only the perpetrator would know, a standard tactic to preserve the integrity of future interrogations and trial testimony. A significant legal controversy looming over the estate is the application of California's Slayer statute, Probate Code Section 250. This law generally prohibits an individual who feloniously and intentionally kills a decedent from inheriting any part of their estate. Implications. If Nick is convicted of first-degree murder, he is automatically disinherited, and his share would likely pass to his siblings. The complication. If Nick is found not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI, the legal waters become murky. Because an NGRI verdict implies the defendant lacked the intent required for a crime, civil courts might have to separately adjudicate whether the killing was intentional for the purposes of inheritance, potentially leading to prolonged litigation over the family fortune. Legal experts anticipate that the defense will rely heavily on Nick Reiner's psychiatric history. The most probable strategy is a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI. To succeed, the defense must prove that at the time of the act, Nick was unable to understand the nature of his actions or distinguish right from wrong due to his mental disease. His reported behavior in custody, claiming conspiracies and failing to understand the charges, supports the groundwork for this defense. Strengths. The prosecution possesses strong circumstantial evidence, including the timeline, the argument the night before, the presence of the suspect at the home, and forensic evidence likely gathered at the scene. Challenges. The primary challenge will be countering the insanity defense. Prosecutors will need to demonstrate that despite his illness, Nick possessed the mens rea, criminal intent, and premeditation required for a first-degree murder conviction. Selecting a jury for the trial will be exceptionally difficult. Rob Reiner's fame means nearly every potential juror will recognize the victims. Furthermore, Reiner's political activism may introduce bias. Prospective jurors may have strong positive or negative feelings about his public stances. The court will likely require an extensive voir dire process to find impartial individuals capable of judging the case solely on the evidence. Reporting on the Reiner case requires navigating complex ethical boundaries. Media outlets are tasked with reporting the facts of a double homicide without exploiting the mental health crisis of the accused or the grief of the survivors. The true crime genre's tendency to treat real-life tragedy as entertainment is particularly scrutinized here. Responsible coverage has focused on the systemic issues, mental health, legal processes, rather than graphic descriptions of the crime scene, respecting the victim's dignity and their surviving children's plea for privacy. The deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner mark the end of a significant chapter in American cultural life. Rob Reiner's body of work, films that defined the humor and heart of a generation, stands in stark contrast to the violent manner of his death. Michelle Reiner's legacy of compassion and advocacy offers a roadmap for the very reforms this case may eventually necessitate. Ultimately, this tragedy is likely to shape future discussions on three fronts: the pressures of growing up in the shadow of Hollywood success, the desperate need for better mental health intervention for families in crisis, and the complexities of compassionate justice. While the legal proceedings will determine the fate of Nick Reiner, the cultural impact of his parents' lives and deaths will resonate far beyond the courtroom.